Welcome guys, this is Wise Nerd and here on Nerds on a Quest, today I'll be talking about Spider-Man Far From Home, to give you my personal opinion on what I think is the writing lesson that it leaves for today. So, let's begin. This Spider-Man sequel begins right after the events of Avengers Endgame, and we see how Peter Parker has grown a little bit more since Spider-Man Homecoming. So, the movie is about Spider-Man fighting against Mysterio, that is an organization created by Tony Stark's frustrated ex-employees, who designed a fake superhero from another dimension that is portrayed by Quentin Beck. And I'm saying that it's a fake superhero because all of the threats that appear in the trailers and in almost half of the movie, like the monsters we see in this first and second trailer, those are fake, and the real threat is Mysterio. But Spider-Man is ready to save the day, to fill Tony Stark's shoes, and also learn that with great power comes great responsibility all at once. Yeah, I know, this movie is overwhelming. So, now let's go with my humble personal opinion. So, I didn't like this movie as much as other Spidey fans because I think that the writers wanted to show the different types of conflicts that Peter has all at once in one movie. Because you get the Peter's grief about Tony Stark's death, then you got Peter trying to have a romantic relationship and handling the duty and responsibility of being Spider-Man. Also, you have the villain that has nothing to do with Peter, but then he wants to kill him. Also, you get the inner conflict about being a Spider-Man because of Tony Stark's death. Sincerely, there were lots of plot points to cover, and in 2 hours it is really overwhelming, and you don't feel like there's a closure to every arc open in this movie. And you feel like a lot of time is wasted between jokes and boring classmate dynamics. So I'm going to cover each of the points I mentioned before. I'm going to do it with more order and less overwhelming because that's what Spider-Man Far From Home was, overwhelming. First plot point: Peter's grief about the loss of his mentor and almost kind of father figure, Tony Stark. I loved this plot point at the beginning of the movie because you have a Peter Parker developing PTSD, and I like that scene when he's looking to the mural of Iron Man, and I was expecting a monologue or a longer scene of just silence, but we just had this short moment of grief, and then everybody's telling Peter to fill Tony Stark's shoes. And he's just forced into it. I mean, this Peter Parker never takes decisions on his own, or at least he's never allowed to take them. So, to close the idea, I think that this plot point was great to add in the movie because, I mean, every fan has to deal with Tony Stark's death. And then Mysterio makes this illusion of a zombie Iron Man, and I loved it. I loved that illusion because it takes this grief moment into something just ugly, really. And I like this because it's kind of like a process of emancipation of this Spider-Man from Tony Stark. But then we have Nick Fury and Happy filling Iron Man's shoes of being this father figure to Peter by giving him like a jet or secret missions or whatever he needs. So this Spider-Man never has like this Sam Raimi style of just being a poor guy in New York who's struggling to live in New York as a poor guy, and he has to take his own decisions. And I mean, this Peter Parker is just covered in everything, and I think, to go back to the point, this part will have shined more if some other plot points were just banned, as well as the jokes and puns, but I get over that in just a few minutes. Second plot point: Peter trying to handle a romantic relationship and his duty as a Spidey all at once. For me, this point was the one that the writers were focusing more, but they didn't develop this subplot that much. And how can I explain that? Well, it was kind of like Peter's center of attention, but in all of the 150 stuff you see in this movie, believe me, this is just like 40% or 30% of all the movie. Because, I mean, even in the romantic parts between Peter and MJ, you don't see any character development or any chemistry between the characters. They don't shine us that much because it doesn't feel natural. And it's not in a racist way. I mean, I like Zendaya. I mean, he made a great portrayal in The Greatest Showman, and I like that romance because it worked. It worked perfectly. But here with Peter Parker, you don't feel that chemistry. I mean, both actors are super talented, but throughout the movie, there's just a small part in the beginning where Peter is nervous when MJ is around and he takes time to buy her something in the trip. And it is amazing because it shows us that he actually cares about this part of his life. But as I said before, it feels rushed with all of the overwhelming things. I mean, if they just took a little bit more of scenes just to explain this love arc, I mean, I would have liked that more. Peter's classmates and unnecessary jokes. So this part will be short because in my opinion the movie could have been better if the writers had decided to skip the parts related to unnecessary interactions with his classmates. I mean, for example, the guy who grew up during the 5 years between the snap and the blip was there to be Peter's competition, and I thought, well, he's going to get the girl or become a villain related to Peter and not just Tony Stark, and I would really have loved to see that. But no, we didn't get that. Also, I didn't like Flash Thompson, the other girl that becomes Ned's girlfriend, and Peter Parker's teachers, because they are useless characters that add puns with no purpose. I mean, Spider-Man makes jokes and it's part of the character, but I think that he needed to make the jokes by himself, not others. Also, the writers could have used Peter to make the jokes, and the scenes with useless characters could have been deleted and replaced with moments of reflection about being Spider-Man or moments of romance between Peter and MJ, because believe me, the jokes in this movie are really bad. I mean, they're almost like dad jokes. Not even puns, dad jokes. Final plot point, the villain. I like Jake Gyllenhaal's portrayal as Mysterio, aka Quentin Beck, aka Liar. He did a great job as this villain, fooling almost everybody until the third act, and I love the way that he fights against Spider-Man and the message that he wants to transmit in all of the movie. It's amazing of how people believe in everything nowadays, and it is something that is true, but I think that he shouldn't have been related to Tony Stark, because I mean, this is a Spider-Man movie. This Spider-Man never acts on his own, and when he comes to fight villains, because the only thing that this Spider-Man does is fight in the battles that others, Tony Stark, Nick Fury, have to fight. Also, this Spider-Man becomes almost rich, and I don't know, but he's really far away from the comic book teenager Spider-Man. But I think that in the third act, Mysterio teaches Peter a lesson and makes the fight more personal. And I like how Marvel is settling everything up for the third installment of Spider-Man, where he will have to fight against his old and new villains, in a battle where all villains are related to Peter's past actions. So that is why I like Mysterio, because he became a villain that had a relationship with Peter Parker and took the time to make this personal, make this villain more personal, not just against Tony Stark legacy, but also Spider-Man. So, guys, let me know what you think about this movie in the comment section down below. Like and subscribe to become a legendary nerd here on Nerds on a Quest. See you on the next one. Bye.